meaning meaning that we introduce a poet that many of us may know, but maybe not, and allow that poet some time to present a sampling of their work. And the in context part is that we start with a little interview, mostly so that we can understand a little better where all that wonderful poetry is coming from. So tonight's poet in context is D.L. Lang. She is an internationally published poet, and she was Vallejo's Poet Laureate from 2017 to 2019. And you can follow her and her books and her publications and her events, and she will also, if you sign up at the right places, keep you informed about opportunities to contribute your poetry to various anthologies. Her email address is, all one word, poetryebook@gmail.com. Poetryebook@gmail.com. And I always read that poetry iBook, but it's not that what it is. Poetryebook.
Get some tea.
Right. So many of us here know you, DL, because we've read with you, we've listened to you, we've read your works. But one of the questions I have is, when did you start writing poetry? How did it happen?
When I was about, I could start at different points. When I was a kid, I really wanted to be an international spy. And
Of course.
I got caught writing in notebooks. And one teacher said, "Stop doing this, it's horrible behavior." And the other one said, "You should be a writer." Well, it took a few years for that to kind of sink in as a kid. And by the time I was 11, I was writing short stories. And when I was 12, I got really into music and I wanted to start writing song lyrics. So that's really where it started.
All right. And are you a writer who writes you write prolifically, but do you write regularly every day, or do you have a routine, or how do you do this?
It's a combination between random inspiration, writing about things I've experienced, or trying to write for a theme that somebody asks me to do. I don't write every day. Sometimes I'll go for months and not write a thing and then have a burst of inspiration for a whole month.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, these are fascinating things. And I would just like to go with you now on the poetic journey that you're going to lead us in. Please go ahead, and everybody else, please mute yourselves so that we don't have any distracting background noises. DL.
Thank you. So Mary Susan asked me to speak about Passover because that starts tomorrow evening. And I wrote this poem specifically because of this request, because none of my prior poems about Passover really resonated with me at this point. Mm. And there's a way of reading the Passover story that all Jews have to consider themselves as having gone through this personally. And if you don't know anything about Passover, it's Jewish people were enslaved in Egypt, and they stood up to Pharaoh until he finally let them go. And God caused a lot of plagues that only affected the Egyptians and not the Jews. And then they were set free and wandered in the desert for 40 years. So that's the context. This poem is called Eternal. We are to put ourselves in the shoes of the enslaved, who stood up to tyranny, surviving years of misfortune, and find empathy with their struggle for freedom. We are to look around the world and see that the struggle continues in every corner of the earth, in every prison cell, in every hospital, in every homeless shelter, in every workplace, in every household, in every neighborhood, in every country, in every refugee camp, in every heart, every mind, and every soul. We are required to fight for freedom and justice wherever injustice rears its ugly head. We are required to take the side of the oppressed in the name of our ancestors who faced oppression. There is no shirking from duty in this battle, for it is an eternal battle between good and evil, a battle that will only end once our collective actions towards unity, love, forgiveness, and justice bring about the better world that we all yearn for. We may not know exactly how to reach this dream, nor be able to comprehend a world without suffering, just like our ancestors who could not shake their mindset. But we must walk forward in faith as if it depends on us. Last week, I traveled to Tulsa, Oklahoma, because both Suzanne Bruce and I, grew up in Oklahoma, won a haiku contest. And now, for the next 30 days or so, if you travel around downtown Tulsa, you're going to find haikus from 10 winners. And they had the ceremony to recognize us at the Woody Guthrie Center, which is my favorite place in Oklahoma. And they let me into the Woody Guthrie Center and the Bob Dylan Center for free, and it was a very inspiring trip. I'd like to recite the haiku for you now. It's called Hope of All People. Woody, Bob Dylan, center of the universe, sing out hope for all. While I was in the Bob Dylan Center, watching just this endless reel of performance videos, I started getting poetry coming to me. Well, luckily, they have a poetry corner, complete with a typewriter. So I went over to the typewriter, and on the page, the blank page there, all it said was, "Welcome, type hard." So that's what I call this poem. Inspiration floats around on these sacred grounds, where the biggest dreams are found. Lose yourself, turn around. Magic lives in every sound. One city block carrying forth progress upon melodic wings. Everybody sing. Together we will win. This poem is called Tulsa and is a more general poem about my trip. I fly in on the wings of love towards the center of the universe, floating in the heavens on this giant bird, descending towards a calling etched deep within my soul, as the land sprouts with words, begging you to shout its story, the joy, the love, and the pain embedded in the landscape, whispering in every grain. I wept, walking the streets of Greenwood, saying Kaddish, for the hundreds of souls who perished at the deadly hands of white supremacy in this very spot. A mandatory American pilgrimage. Generations of people live on in this place, reminding us of all the trouble they've seen. The birds sing out for freedom outside of Guthrie Green, where wanderers come to rest, and I offer what little I have left. Woody's spirit reaches through time, words written 80 years ago this week echoing deep within my mind, solidifying my heart's dedication to walk forward without hesitation. In the theater, the poets gathered with handshakes and warm hugs, forming instant friendships, bonding over shared love in a magical, welcoming place where history and song collide, unearthing a truth so powerful, demanding the ultimate freedom which humanity shall not be denied. This next one was an ekphrastic poem that I never actually got to perform, because much like missing the December reading for First Tuesday Poets, this was at the same time, and we were quarantined. So it's called Who Put Catnip in My Coffee? Upon seeing the painting, I imagined a house party where people slowly turn into cats. Who put catnip in my coffee? What herbs were in this tea? Honeysuckle? Valerian? Perhaps some silver vine? We're all slowly growing whiskers, sprouting tails and glowing eyes. Whatever's in this brew feels a bit feline. Looking out in awe upon this wild scene, enveloped by a living rainbow, faces purple, orange, and green. This party is the cat's meow. It's like none you've ever seen. Alley cats give speeches that we all can understand, as if there was no boundary between feline and humanity. Thunderous applause emanates from kitten claws as we meow in harmony. A wise old house cat croons her entire autobiography. At the end of reincarnation, her 9 life cycle almost complete, She said that being loved was life's true immortality. This poem was inspired by traveling up to see the Columbia River, which I'd only ever heard about in Woody Guthrie songs. It won Reserve Best of Show at the Solano County Fair last year, and it was aired by KALW's Bay Poets. It's called Columbia River Gorges. Atop majestic mother mountains, on the horizon dusted with snow, the forest stretches as far as the eye can see. Small towns peek out from the trees, their brick buildings whispering history, as diners chat their mornings away. Freight trains snake through the valley, whistling haunting lonely songs, rails rumbling from coast to coast, connecting the world to what she needs most. Railside telegraph lines carry secret messages from the past upon glistening green glass. Fueled by coffee, truckers roll along the highway, delivering pieces of America to the people, crossing bridges of woven steel as wind turbines wave from rocky cliffs. Through morning mist and fog, the birds zip chaotically across the sky, chase choppy currents as the river rapids rush and rage through the lock and dam, cheerfully churning to power the land. A double rainbow illuminates the way for travelers passing through on the way to Grand Coulee as the canyon echoes with the ghost of Guthrie. This poem is called How Can I Teach You to Follow a Dream? I can only point towards the road, perhaps hidden behind tall trees, but I cannot make you walk it, nor keep you from straying. This road is not paved with gold. Its foundation is only cooperation. While necessary for survival, gold itself is not the path. This pathway is illuminated by spotlights, but this illumination is incomplete, hiding the dark spaces in between, where distraction whispers, relent. I can only show you the doorways, but it is up to you to pass through them. No matter how many seeds of opportunity I plant, it is your choice whether or not you blossom. For you can choose not to water them, and let the dust gently blow out the candle that held that last spark until forgotten, like a childhood memory laid to rest. This next poem was inspired by talking to a friend. I said, I don't know if I believe in heaven or not, but I hope there's singing. And he said, there will be. It's called Rehearsal. When the world comes knocking and the storms are growing near, we are shielded by community. Our peace cannot be pierced. We're in rehearsal for heaven. Every voice has joined in song. For in holy moments together, it seems nothing can go wrong. Souls mingling with joy, melody lingering in the air. In such magical of hours, we forget all our despair. We're in rehearsal for heaven. Every day we practice prayer. With every note that rises, it feels like we're already there. I wrote and performed this poem for the Women's Wave protest in San Francisco at Union Square last year. It was inspired by the bravery of the Iranian people and the resistance to the rolling back of women's rights here in America. It's called A Better World. I believe in a better world where women, non-binary and trans folks have the right to choose when and if they give birth, and no one is ever forced to have a child against their will, especially if they are a child themselves. I believe in a better world where no one has to endure the trauma and violence of assault, and women and girls are finally treated with respect and dignity and given full autonomy in matters of health and sexuality, no longer having to fear exploitation and trafficking. I believe in a better world where a person, regardless of gender, may dress however they please without fear of violence, discrimination, or imprisonment, and no authority can force them to do otherwise. I believe in a better world where a woman, regardless of race or religion, may wear her hair however she pleases without fear of losing her job or losing her life. I believe in a better world where women can walk freely down the street without fear of violence or harassment by fellow citizens or their government. I believe in a better world where no woman has to live in poverty or go hungry, nor worry about the cost of health care or housing, and all of her needs are met simply because she exists. I believe in a better world where all people are finally free from the evils of patriarchy, capitalism, racism, and fascism. I believe in a better world where trans women, disabled women, queer women, and women of color are given the same rights and respect as the richest women on this planet. I believe in a better world where spiritual practice is a personal choice, leading to greater kindness, understanding, and mercy among all peoples, and the tenets of faith shall not be enforced by governments who abuse it for control, violence, and hatred. May our voices ring out in solidarity with our sisters from the streets of Iran to the American South, furthering empowering us all to rise up against oppression. May the spirit echo around the globe so that we may all finally know peace, equality, and freedom. May the steps we take today in this beautiful city be the pathway towards making our collective dreams a reality. Since Earth Day falls within the month of April, I'd like to read This Planet Cries Out. To live on this planet in these times is to swallow a giant dose of reality, if you're paying attention at all. It is so easy to escape into fantasy, to only focus on what we can control. But something deeper is stirring in my soul. It calls me to speak out, ignoring all risk. How do we make sense of a world that allows poverty, war, and greed to flourish? How do we make sense of a world that runs on money instead of love? How do we make sense of a world that allows a wealthy few to destroy our home? How do we make sense of a world so utterly broken and upside down? How do we make sense of a world that is so unbelievably heartbreaking that it would be sinful to be well-adjusted? This planet cries out to us in all her multitudes of language that very soon we must all do something about this broken trust. Young people march in the streets, crying out to all the adults who have become complacent. Don't we deserve to know some peace? Don't we deserve to know real freedom? Don't we deserve to know equality? Don't we deserve to experience love? Don't we deserve to realize our dreams? Don't we deserve to know stability? Don't we deserve to inherit a world? Period. We deserve so much better than this. Yet, we stay on the hamster wheel, gorging ourselves to fill the emptiness, serving ourselves and tuning out, feeling apathy and hopelessness, rather than rising in defiance, just so that we may know a better future. This next one is an ekphrastic poem inspired by Lest We Forget the Massacres by Susan Lane. America, your people are dying, and your flag is a bloody shroud, covering the earth like a dark cloud. America guarantees us the right to own unlimited weapons of war, but not food, shelter, nor health care. America, where victims' names are forgotten, but the killers are psychoanalyzed, idolized, imitated, martyred, and romanticized as the people's cries go unheard. In America, there's never a polite time to discuss our backwards priorities. So we stand idly by while children continue to die. America, we have enough guns. Lay down your arms and raise a banner of peace. America, when will you value life? Vallejo's Poet Laureate Jeremy Snyder asked us all to write about Black History Month a few years ago, it being both Passover and the anniversary of Dr. King's assassination. Freedom is on my mind. Black History Month. They confine it to a month to have a reason to pat themselves on the back, as if racism only existed in a not-so-distant past. Because if they actually regularly told us the truth, who would ever pledge allegiance except bigots? It'll take a whole hell of a lot longer than a month to fix centuries of discrimination and genocide, and it won't be healed by whitewashing and lies, erasing memories of the people who have died, nor stowing the knowledge in the back of our minds. To be honest, I don't really care about European kings and queens and how long they reigned, weaponizing religion for their own personal gain, nor who declared themselves victor in whatever colonial war. So stop teaching history from a rich white man's perspective It's time we all stopped elevating these grifters. I'd rather sing a more egalitarian song for our national anthem, like We Shall Overcome or If I Had a Hammer, and live in a country whose heroes stood for liberation and not just when it was convenient for their vocation. The only king worthy of a throne was named Martin. I'd rather see statues of Fred Hampton than J.P. Morgan, listen to Paul Robeson instead of Frank Sinatra, study in libraries named for Langston Hughes instead of Carnegie, have stadiums named after Kaepernick and not Henry Ford, and fund schools named for Malcolm X instead of Washington. Slavery is still enshrined in the U.S. Constitution, and equality is about more than just representation in a system that still benefits financially from oppression, while for centuries the wealthy keep avoiding taxation. So tear down the prisons and have real rehabilitation of communities still suffering from immoral legislation. But that is only one part of the equation. For what good is having more and more stuff if you're afraid that you'll lose someone that you love? I don't want another neighbor executed by the state, or bombed to smithereens in countries we invade, or gunned down in a hellfire of legalized hate. I want to see all humanity rise and be uplifted. I want this entire broken world to be shifted. But for the love of God, don't just take my word for it. I'm only a disabled female socialist Jew. Do your own research in March through January too. You sure didn't learn the truth in elementary school. Please don't just read without doing good deeds. Get out on the streets and march in solidarity. For books will not be the end of the story. Every day is a time for making history. Because if you aren't free, then neither are we. I have 3 poems about museums. That seems to be a theme in my poetry lately. This one is inspired by the Grammy Museum. They had a giant exhibit on protest music, and I felt very inspired. It's called The Dreamers. I am a poet, surrounded by the spirits of singers who I've never met. Melodies float through the air, encased in question marks. Their simple album covers preserve the heart of humanity. Their instruments hang on the walls, but they shall never be silenced. Their hand-scrawled lyrics carve bursts of righteous fire, calling towards the future, reaching through the darkness, traveling time and space, daring you to hope, shining a light on the past, demanding that you see reality past the haze of propriety. Each chorus sparks bravery, each note roars out justice, each word demands peace. Having changed you so much that you think you might change the world, the rhythms eventually move you to your feet and out in the streets, surrounded by thousands, protest signs rising sky high like prayers in the wind, confidently demanding that things change, and now. All you have to do is follow the music, and it will lead you home. Last year, I read at the Beat Museum with the Revolutionary Poets Brigade, and that novel experience inspired this poem. It's called In the Heart of North Beach, the Poets Speak. Under the watchful eyes of Hirschman and Ferlinghetti, whose radical poetic spirit shone forth from bright red walls sandwiched between banned books and beat memorabilia, the revolutionary poets raised their voices in song and verse, one word a step closer to a better world free of greed's curse. Each poet's pen a weapon in the struggle for freedom, their souls joining in the fight by taking to the mic, condemning monarchy, capitalism, and hatred. Words rang out into the North Beach streets for all passers-by to hear and heed the call for action. With melodies floating in the air like sunshine, we harmonized and sang out in solidarity, illuminating the pathway forward for humanity. Thank you for having me. This will be my last poem. It was inspired by the Vindy Museum, which I had the honor of reading a poem for an anthology down there. It's called In the Vindy. As Lenin points skyward, MLK's voice floats in the air. Terry Noir's rainbow figures embrace a slab of the wall. Russian books tower overhead as far as the eye can see. East German melodies yearn to be heard by new ears. Hebrew floats between the Megillah and Birobijan. Wrapped in talitot, my people cry out for the freedom to be themselves while working to build this new world. As the red flag flies, the workers remain immortalized in canvas, and Tallman's ghost is reborn in a monument in the garden. Among their spirits, the poets gather to roar America's truth, sparking visions of a better future for our youth. The Hungarian poet Joseph Attila looks on proudly from his typewriter like a proletarian guardian angel, each new verse radiating fire, illuminating life, birthing dreams, never to perish from the earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And let's unmute just for a moment here so we can hear some applause and make a few comments and
Well, I can't clap.
just show our appreciation.
Thank you.
Oh,
Hey,
DL,
thank you, DL.
your many sources of inspiration just are like confetti in the air. It flows and it colors everything, and yet there's this strength of a vision, the better world that moves through it all. What a combination.
Thank you so much.
Incredible.
DL, you remind me to walk the walk, to get out there and be seen and heard. Thank you.
Amen.
What I love is that even though you, all of these poems come, as Mary Susan says, from all these different influences and are read at all these different places, there still is a strong unifying thing that is just plain you.
Yeah.
You can just hear it over and over again. Your poetry is very identifiable.
Thank you.
Good job. Great job.
Okay.
Thank you.
We appreciate your being here. Okay, well, we're going to move now into our open mic portion of the show, and the